Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. This is Ukraine War breaking news update for the 27th of November 2024. Sorry I've done so much content today, but a lot is happening. It's a very key time of the war as you've got this transition government trying to make its mark, appoint different people, try and get things sorted out to hit the ground running with regard to all sorts of things, most notably the Ukraine war. Okay. So the Trump administration has officially appointed retired General Keith Kellogg, 80, as the US Special Envoy for Ukraine. Kellogg has presented Trump with a plan to end the war, which includes freezing combat along the current front lines, pushing both Ukraine and Russia into negotiations. So just before we read Trump's statement, just to remind us who Kellogg is, he, together with a chap called Fleiss, had put together a peace plan that broadly involved, when Trump got in, would involve Trump saying to Ukraine, if you don't come to the negotiating table, we will not give you any further aid, and at the same time saying to Russia, if you don't come to the negotiating table, we will give Ukraine so much military assistance that you won't know what's hit you. And that would be a way of forcing both sides to the table. I've talked about this already today, that I think is problematic because it forces Ukraine to the table at a time that is in January, end of January, that would, as it stands at the moment, things might change though. As it stands at the moment, that would be more advantageous for Russia. And also it doesn't seem to have any scope for if neither of the sides agree to come to the table, which is actually, I think, the most likely outcome at the moment. None of those two want to. They both think they've got options that would bring an advantage to themselves going forward. So there are still a lot of questions to be answered, but Kellogg is someone who has visited Ukraine. He understands Ukraine. This is not a properly bad, like, pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine appointment. This is I think an appointment that will get through Congress, and most people will be broadly happy with this. So in that respect, this is a good appointment. Kellogg is pro-Trump. Of course he is. That's why he's been appointed as well. But he, I think, has a good grasp of what's going on. Especially being a retired general as well. This guy should know his onions, right? Trump says, I'm very pleased to nominate General Keith Kellogg to serve as assistant to the president and special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. Keith has led a distinguished military and business career, including serving in highly sensitive national security roles in the first administration. He was with me right from the beginning. Together we will secure peace through strength, all caps, and make America and the world safe again. Okay, so that's Trump's position there. Here, this Handle Republicans Against Trump states the following about the appointment. Donald Trump appoints Keith Kellogg, former national security advisor to Vice President Mike Pence, as special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. Here's what the retired General Kellogg told Congress last year about the importance of supporting Ukraine. We'll let him speak for himself.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, I believe if you can defeat a strategic adversary not using any U.S. troops, you're at the acme of professionalism, because letting the Ukrainians defeat that, it takes a strategic adversary off the table, and then we can focus where we should be focusing against our primary adversary, which is China at this time.
This is super important because he said very clearly, if we defeat Russia, if Ukraine defeats Russia, so that is talking in terms of clarity on kind of what you would want, which is Russia to lose. Now, we haven't heard that from Trump. We've heard a lot of, both sides want peace. We want a peace that's fair to both sides. Whereas Kellogg here is erring on the side of, Ukraine defeating Russia takes Russia off the table, and we can concentrate on a proper enemy, that is China.
Professionalism, because letting the Ukrainians defeat that, it takes a strategic adversary off the table, and then we can focus where we should be focusing against our primary adversary, which is China at this time. The concern I've got is I don't think we need to put American troops there. And if we fail in this, we may have to fight another European war. It'll be the third time. And I don't think we should do that or need to do that as well. Thank you, sir.
Which is absolutely right. So he's saying, look, if we don't allow Ukraine to win, then we might end up having to send American troops to Europe as, Article 5 gets invoked. NATO Article 5. So this guy he's got his head switched on there. It's screwed on. He knows what he's talking about. He doesn't appear to be wanting to appease Russia overtly. So this is potentially, a good appointment. Now, UPI News here reports it as Trump appoints Keith Kellogg as special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. It says later, the 80-year-old Kellogg is a retired lieutenant general and served as national security advisor to former Vice President Mike Pence. European allies are worried that Trump will pressure Ukraine to give up territory occupied by Russia and that the United States will not provide enough military aid and security guarantees to Ukraine in its battle to expel the Russian invaders. Kellogg, in a foreign policy role at the Trump-aligned America First Policy Institute, has been skeptical of US support for Ukraine in its war of self-defense against Russia. Kellogg and former national security aide Fred Fleitz revealed a policy plan that would make ongoing US aid to Ukraine conditional on participation in peace talks with Russia. Russian President Putin has shown little interest in real peace talks since he ordered Russian troops to invade Ukraine in February 2022. Russia currently occupies roughly 20% of Ukraine and has never publicly offered to withdraw the troops in exchange for any peace deal, and in fact has said that basically that's not on the table. With Republicans in control of the Senate next year, Kellogg is not expected to face any significant opposition from the GOP to that appointment. Right, okay. Now, I want to now play you this Fox News interview of Kellogg, and I'm not quite sure whether this is prior to his appointment, because certainly at the beginning they don't mention the appointment, but this is obviously very recently. This is, I think, today. And in fact, Keith Kellogg said, oh no, this is the 22nd. So sorry, this is 5 days ago. But there is a lot to pull out from this. He says, great to be with Fox News on critical issues in the war in Ukraine. When it comes to international issues to be worked and solved by President-elect Trump, this war is the wolf closest to the sled. In other words, this is the one we need to sort out first. This is our most pressing concern. So that's good news. It's not about pivoting to China and to the detriment of support for Ukraine. This is like, we need to sort this out first. So that's good news. Okay, I will interject. I'm going to do my commentary through this.
All right, let's dig deeper on this now. General Keith Kellogg is a former national security advisor and Fox News contributor. It's been a minute, General. Welcome back from the campaign trail.
Good to be back.
So, Ukraine's ex-top general says World War III has begun. I'm sure that he would like the world to believe that so that the Allies throw in with Ukraine. But do you really see it that way?
No, I don't think World War III has begun, but we're right on the precipice. I mean,
first thing to say is because I personally think World War III has begun. We just don't really realise it. But if I was in his position, I probably wouldn't want to shout that a lot. So I can imagine that whatever he believes, he's saying the right thing. But he says, but we're on a precipice. And that is correct. People need to understand that, okay, if you don't want to scare people that we're at World War III right now, then we are very close to being. So functionally, pretty much the same. We need to be working really hard to resolve this.
It's right there. And what I mean by that is when you look at what's happening, look at the alliance, what President Trump kept apart. He had North Korea over here, he had China over here, he had Iran here, and he had Russia over here. And what you've seen them now is they've all joined. You've got an axis together, and they're feeding off one another. Just in June, Russia signed a self-defense pact with North Koreans. So now, for the first time in its history, North Korea has exported fighters into Russia. Between 10 to 30,000 North Koreans are now.
Okay, interesting. So he's rightly joined these conflicts together. And I think that's a right thing to do. You can't ignore Ukraine. There is this axis of evil. And if you want to sort out China, then actually you've got to understand the connection of China to Russia, North Korea to Russia, Iran to Russia, so on and so forth. But also interestingly, he says between 10 and 30,000 North Korean troops. I was talking with Greg Terry earlier, and he was saying that the South Koreans understand that 100,000 are going to be on the cards for Russia. Maybe not immediately, but that's a scary prospect. So he at least is aware that, North Korean troops being there is a big challenge.
Fighting, you're seeing a use of an intermediate range ballistic missile that can be nuclear tipped, being shot at Dnipro, a city of around 900,000. So you're seeing this thing starting to build. And that, I think, internationally is going to be President Trump's biggest thing he's going to have to solve, which is the fight there in Ukraine and Russia, which happens to be the largest land war in Europe since the end of World War II. Yeah. So it's massive. So, and John, you know this, a simple spark can spin things right out of control. and without even trying out there. And
you assassinate one archduke and suddenly...
Yep, absolutely.
Good. Touche. General, talk to us about this new sort of sophisticated weapon that Putin is now... He launched some kind of medium-range ballistic missiles with a lot of warheads on it into Ukraine. Can you talk to us in layman's terms what it does and how alarmed people should be about it?
It's an intermediate-range ballistic missile based off range, and it's got MIRVs on it, multiple independent reentry vehicles, so more than one warhead. It can
Meaning
be
they
nuclear
can split up and hit a whole lot of targets.
They will break off and hit multiple targets. And again, it can be nuclear tipped. But they only used one, and it's basically a class of what they call truck-mounted intermediate-range ballistic missiles that they've got there. He's used it for psychological reasons, and Jack Keane made a great comment on that. He didn't use it because it was militarily effective, because it hit a city, not very much damage there at all. But he's kind of saying to the West, well, see what I can do.
Absolutely, 100%. This was a saber-rattling event where Putin was psychologically playing with the rest of the world or poking the rest of the world to see how they would react. And I think Kellogg is right here and broadly right in what he says. In fact, he's quite bellicose in what he says now, because he mentions that Joe Biden has stepped back and actually we need to lean into this. I thought that was an interesting thing to hear someone say that who is going to be now appointed as Trump's man, because that is someone who's saying actually we should not be kowtowed by this nuclear saber rattling. Interesting.
And this is one where people have backed off. President Biden's backed off. When the minute he said IRBM, ICBM, nuclear war, we said, oh my gosh, we can't go there. That's when you need to lean in, because he is not, he meaning Putin, he will not start a nuclear war in Europe. And you'd remind him, let me make sure you understand, the Brits have nuclear weapons, the French have nuclear weapons, we've got nuclear weapons, don't go there.
This is absolutely right. And not enough people talk about this. People talk about, oh my goodness, Putin could use nukes. And then you get a lot of people being really scared. A lot of people in the US who reacted to that missile being fired and then used that as a weapon to call for appeasement, essentially. And actually, Kellogg here is saying, no, not enough people talk about the idea that Putin has no good reason to use nukes. It would not benefit him in any way, shape or form. And if we remember that, then we should remember that as a rational actor, which I think Putin is, people say, oh, he's not a rational actor. He is, but it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you have like incorrect assumptions or factors you're plugging into your calculation machine, you will get a bad calculation out at the end. I think that's what Putin is doing, but he's a rational actor. Kellogg here is saying that, you know, he won't use nukes because it's not in his best interest, not by a long shot.
And we haven't really said that to him. So it's kind of a psychological play, and I think Jack Keane's got it right. So he's kind of up the ante in weaponry, just like Zelensky upped the ante when he went into the Kursk region with the long-range missiles. He attacked them
So everybody's wondering why Biden suddenly gave permission to Ukraine to launch these ATACMS deep.
I'm not sure about Zelensky upping the ante. I suppose in a way he was. I mean, that got Russia really peed off. But I hope he doesn't mean that was problematic, because actually that was exactly the right thing for Ukraine to do. After all, Russia has invaded now twice into Ukraine, and you know that in a sense it's retaliation as opposed to upping the ante. But
into Russian territory. Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about that yesterday at the briefing and gave a typical answer. Listen here.
For a long time, the White House argued that using these long-range tactical missiles into Russia to attack targets inside Russia would escalate. The war would really invite retaliation. Why change the policy now?
I'm just not going to get into specific about Ukraine's operations. Not something that I'm going to do today. But I want to be really clear.
But I guess I'm asking about the specifics of the White House's decision to change policy.
I'm just telling you that I'm not going to get into specifics from here from the podium.
Yeah, so that's...
I know they are accusing her of being typically vague, but actually I think in certain things like this, and I've talked about this before, you need to be vague. Sometimes there's too much clarity. Like if Karine Jean-Pierre there was to give a really explicit answer, then you're giving ammunition to to the journalists and also to Russia to be able to say, oh, that's what you think. Well, how about, rather than say, hey, hang on, they're doing what they're doing, no comment. And you keep things suitably vague, and there is a strategic ambiguity there that I think we don't see enough of. And I've said this a number of times. I would not criticize her for that. And I'm not trying to be pro-Biden. I honestly think there's way too much clarity sometimes with the comments that are made in public.
That's what we've kind of gotten used to, saying nothing about everything.
No, that's
but
fine.
Why now? I mean, he's left this pile of dog, on Trump's doorstep.
Here, John, here's what I'm really hoping. I'm hoping that Jake Sullivan talked to Michael Waltz, who's the incoming National Security Advisor, or President Biden has talked to President Trump and said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm really hoping that happened, because what he has done, Biden, through his action, he's actually given President Trump more leverage.
Really?
Because now he can pull back, he can go left, he can go right, he can do something. And I think what he did is he basically said, well, this is what I want to do. And I'm hoping there's something to this. I don't know, but
that's a really interesting point there. And he's almost defending Biden by saying if Biden goes even harder in to help Ukraine, then Trump can come in and pull back and gives him somewhere to go, gives him leverage, or go forward, continue. Interesting idea there from Kellogg.
it does give the President Trump more ability to pivot from that.
Oh, that's interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Just one quick question before we let you go.
Don't think they were expecting him to say that, and nor was I.
We have like 5 seconds, General. But so you're not buying the White House's, the Biden administration's justification that they approved these new long-range weapons because of the North Koreans on the ground inside Ukraine?
It sounds good, but Jillian, what I'm really hoping is there was another reason to it, which gives leverage to President Trump. Maybe that may be a good reason to do it. Look, they should have been doing this a year ago, but they've basically pulled back. You do not fight.
They should have been doing this a year ago. So another good comment there from Kellogg, that he believes that Ukraine should have been given the right to do that a year ago. And I completely agree with that.
You don't fight a war allowing other countries to have sanctuaries. If you're going to fight a war, you fight a war. Yes. And we've
That's the general speaking there. That's a lieutenant general knowing how to do war, saying
basically pulled back on letting Zelensky fight a war that he should have been fighting a long time ago. I know the casualties are horrific.
Yeah, of course.
And I like you saying that on Fox News, and these people are expecting him to try and have a go at Biden for allowing them to use those weapons. He's saying he should have done it earlier. He should have done it a year ago. And I hope that I like to think that shut these guys up, although it's the end of the interview.
But the advantages that he had this last summer are not there anymore. He meaning Zelensky.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't heard from Trump on the use of the attack.
And I think it's real. My thoughts to that are it's very smart.
Okay.
Hold fire.
All right. Good. General, great to see you
Great
back.
to see you, sir.
I love that. They don't quite know what to say there. And he's absolutely right. I talked about this the last 2 days, that Trump said actually very little on Ukraine. And that's exactly right. Strategic ambiguity, just like I said, and also it just keeps people thinking, but also allows him to go, well, I'm not actually sure what I need to do. And I need to listen to information, and I need to listen to the intelligence coming in. So I think everything I've just heard from Kellogg there is pretty much spot on. And so if he's the guy that's going to be in charge of what's going to go on in Ukraine, and I don't know how much scope there is for him to make these sweeping decisions, but I guess he's an envoy, so he's going to be advising. He's not like DOD making the decisions, but I guess it's going to be a cooperative sort of thing there, maybe. But of course, you've got Trump involved too, and Walz as the national security advisor. I think this is good news, all things considered. Given the number of people who could have got that job, here is someone that I don't agree with this peace plan, right? So the peace plan, him and Fleiss, I do not agree with that peace plan. But everything else about what he says seems to be fairly sound. And I think that peace plan was just an idea. I hope it'll be something that they would tinker with, or maybe throw out completely, or at least make more workable, so it's to the benefit of Ukraine. I think as they come in, as a new administration comes in, they will be given a lot more information that they have not previously been privy to, and that will change some of their calculus. Let me know what you think. But anyway, there's the new envoy to Ukraine in the incoming administration. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.